To me, a leader is a visionary that energizes others. This definition of leadership has two key dimensions: A, creating the vision of the future, and B, inspiring others to make the vision a reality. Vince Lombardi. On today's episode, we discuss going from being the doer to managing the doing, how a company specialized in website design is contributing to battling COVID-19, and how what is going on in the world when you start your business impacts how you manage and grow your business into the future. Welcome to the Stitched for Success podcast, where we are teaching business and life lessons that will help you launch, grow, or scale your creative business. I am Monica Allen, and I'm a wife, mom, daughter, entrepreneur, author, friend, lifelong learner, and host of this podcast. For over 8 years, I was stuck in corporate and dreamt of escaping. Creating a side hustle with just $700 and having taken the leap over 15 years ago, we have since grown multiple six-figure and seven-figure brands. Being an entrepreneur for over 18 years has afforded me many successes and a few failures. I want to share those with you so you can grow and be successful in your business. On the last episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Jason Rhodes and Abigail White about working together and the pros and cons of being in business with your spouse. If you missed that, please check out episode 42 for their tips on being successful in marriage and in business. Today, I bring to you the portion of my interview with them that gets more into their business challenges and growth strategies. This interview took place back in late 2020, but still rings relevant and true today. I'm so excited to have Abigail White and Jason Rhodes with me today. Welcome to the Stitch for Success podcast, guys.
Hey, thanks, Monica.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate your time. I know you two are very busy. So we're just going to hop right in with some questions. What was the reason you started your business and what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I had a straightforward answer of why I started the business or even when, because it was a pretty natural progression. I had been freelancing since college in the world of web and graphic design. And it felt very natural to me to start to build, I don't want to say a company around me, but a team or a culture around what my goals were in the industry. And at the time, it was right at the beginning of the .com era, and it was very Wild West. And there was a specific type of work I wanted to do, but I was not really able to find another company or agency that was really investing in the type of technology and creativity that I was really fascinated by. So I guess the simplest way I can answer that is that I was very enthusiastic about a certain type of web design, and I had a huge passion for it. And I knew the best pathway for me to do more of it, well, at least I thought at the time, was to start Toolbox Number 9 and pursue that path along with Abigail.
So you all decided to create your own ideal job rather than finding a company to work for.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I'd come from an agency background as well. And there was a little bit of the arrogance of youth where it was like, oh, we're going to create our own company and it's going to be perfect. And we're going to have the perfect culture and we're going to provide, the perfect work. And so, of course, as we're going to discuss today, there was a few bumps on the road, but there was certainly kind of an, idealistic vision of really not just creating the ideal jobs for ourselves, but also the ideal jobs for the team that we were going to build.
Yeah, and that's really the prism that we make a lot of decisions on is what would we have wanted at that stage in our career? Like what type of coaching, what type of work would we want to have been placed on? We haven't spoken much about what we do, but the idea of building a culture and a workflow and find the right clients that would have appealed to us in our 20s and 30s and now in our 40s. So that's just a good filter to make really hard decisions on.
Right. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you all do?
So at Toolbox Number 9, we're a web development agency with a strong emphasis on user experience design. So we have two sides of the business. One is a focus on marketing. So we do enterprise websites, dynamic infographics, and other kind of associated digital marketing pieces. And on the other side of the fence, we provide UX, UI, and front-end development for software and product. And although those sound somewhat different, really our approach and that emphasis on user experience really kind of flows through our work on both sides of the fence.
That sounds really very interesting. I'm not a big tech person, so I don't get all of it, but I know I've, looked at your website and seen some of the projects that you all do, and it's absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah, I guess
really
the simplest way I could say it is making websites and applications just easier to use, more simple, more engaging, sometimes more fun. So generally, a technology company or a company with a product or service and a website, they're, how should I say, sometimes they're embarrassed by what their front of the house looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they need a company like ours to redesign and rebuild what a user is going to see and interact with. So I think the coolest part from at least my perspective is we get exposed to a lot of different companies. They all have very, very different customers and needs, and obviously different products and services. So it's our job to really understand the value of what they're providing and then create this like wrapper around it that makes it really appealing to their customers when they're visiting. So once again, from my perspective, I'm inundated with different types of companies and people and information. And it's just this constant learning process. It's very, very energizing.
I think that's so important though, because as a user to multiple websites, that's your introduction to a company. So, many times that's your first introduction to a company these days. So I think that's something that we all have to definitely think about as we own our companies and work our companies. So being that you've been doing this now for over 14 years, what has been some of the biggest challenges you guys have faced as you have grown your business?
I guess I can come out of the gate and say that every day is a challenge and it's always new. So it's hard to really rank them. I have to answer that question from like a personal perspective because, running a company, like there's no end to the amount of challenges, whether you're trying to find good people or mentor or find new clients or keep your sales pipeline going or deal with financial or a pandemic, so I don't even know where those rank, but I can say personally for me, my biggest challenge was the evolution of somebody who has a strong passion for creating, for the craftsmanship, in this case of web design and graphic design, and the slow evolution of becoming a leader or manager of people. And that is a huge, at least was for me, a huge fundamental shift of like doing something and then trying to help other people do something and to meet my standards and to meet the client standards and be responsible for someone else's work. And that there's no school for it. And I think I was very subconsciously resistant to letting go of the work because of how much I enjoyed doing it. And it took many, many, many years. You always hear people say, work on the business, not in the business. I think that's a very common entrepreneurial challenge. And I felt that weight. I feel a 10x, so that's for me. And then maybe Abigail could talk a little bit about the ongoing challenges of running a company.
I think you definitely summed it up that in terms of the challenges, it's always evolving. And, you always think, oh, in a few years, I'm going to get more established. I'm going to have consistent pipeline in terms of sales. I'm going to have, a really strong team culture, and I'm going to have it all figured out. And then there's always some curve in the road. For us being a technology forward company, there's always just that, okay, wow, we have a really skilled expert team in these technical solutions, But wait, the whole entire marketplace changed. We now have to have all our developers, learning some entirely new code base so that we can stay relevant, not just relevant, but ahead of the curve. So, from, definitely pivoting and making sure that our company is consistently relevant in the marketplace is certainly one of the challenges. There's no way you can really predict, down the road when you're in our industry, what's going to really be the solutions and the technology that are going to be the most kind of in demand.
Yeah, you both made some huge points there because you often start your business because it's something you're passionate about, right, Jason? And you're creating and you're doing what you love. And then once the baby grows, you have to completely change how you're even working in it. And that can definitely be a challenge. And then Abigail, what you said is I'm the same way. I always think, oh, let me just get over this hump and it'll all be smooth. And there's just another hump coming, right? Or, another hill to climb over. But those are definitely valid points. What would you say if you could go back and tell yourself, your younger self, something when starting your business or starting on this entrepreneurial journey? What would it be?
There's a lot. And, without being hyper specific, because if you could go back in time and you would change the space-time continuum, if you gave yourself too much information, if I could keep that advice as generic as possible, for me personally, it's largely about energy levels and where your energy comes from and where it's destroyed. And I don't think I was really honest with myself, not even from a business perspective, but just from a fundamental human perspective. And, running a company, well, just being a human requires a phenomenal amount of energy, whether you're a parent, whether you're taking care of your family. And of course, running a company, it seems like you need this unlimited fuel supply to surmount those challenges that we talked about a little bit earlier. And the best advice I could have given myself is like, hey, just pay attention to where your energy is created and destroyed. Like who helps bring energy into your world? What type of work gives you fuel to do the work that you don't want to do that requires a huge expenditure of emotional or mental or time energy? So, for me, like I said, I don't think I was really honest with myself about where I get restored and where I find that fuel. And now in the past few years, as I'm in my 40s, I'm like, oh, there's some very obvious patterns. And there's things that I wish I was, and there's just things that it turns out that I am, right? And now that I feel like I have a bigger awareness, self-awareness, I feel like I can find more reserves. And maybe this becomes more important as you get older because your baseline energy is not going up, right? As you get older, the fatigue sets in, whether that's physically or mentally. So my goal is to create sustainable energy for the rest of my career.
So when did you all, because I know, Jason, you mentioned that it was more organic and you began just kind of building a team and you and Abigail began building a team around yourself. But when would you say you kind of officially hired that first employee?
Yeah, it's a kind of a funny story. It really worked out. Let's see. A friend of high school of mine, who is actually now one of our favorite clients. It's funny how this world works. One of her friends' little brothers was just graduating from design school, and I had no money, no office, no confidence that the company was even going to last a year, and found this very eager designer named Brian who was really willing to put in the hard work. And I couldn't afford a salary at that point, and there was so much risk, I thought. But what I could pay is for his delivery. Instead of paying by time, I had like a budget for a project, and I was paying for his value instead of his time. And what that did is that kind of contained cost, meaning like, hey, we need to design this website, and this is the amount of money I have associated with designing it. And if it takes you 1,000 hours or 10 hours, this is the value it can afford. And it worked out. And then there was another project. So we made the same deal and another project. And until he had developed the skills to be able to, I could say, confidently help me. And also his skills were increasing in terms of what I needed him to be kind of, let's say, self-sufficient. And over the time, I got more confident about the client base that was coming in. And finally, I had built up enough cash reserves to confidently hire someone. And for me at that time, the cash reserves is really, I mean, this sounds very fear-based, but it was like, if I have to let this person go, I want to make sure this person has a severance package, right? That was my policy. So I had the amount in my head of like, okay, if anything goes away, I want to make sure he's taken care of for X amount of time. So I worked very hard to build that cash reservoir up. And, you know, as Abigail was saying earlier, we've had these challenges over the past 15 years of dealing with the housing crisis and various macroeconomic cycles. But what's been really important to us is a certain amount of stability and faith and trust that our team has in us to support their livelihoods. So I guess when I brought someone in, it was just luck in terms of finding someone. And Brian ended up working at the company for over 10 years. So
Oh, wow.
really, really watching someone go from just graduation to being an amazing designer and a huge part of our culture was really cool. And so that's probably one of the most important aspects of, I would say, my career, is taking that risk and also watching someone and helping someone mature and grow within your own organization.
The fact that you thought about setting up reserves, and I talk a lot about, you know, making sure you save 10% of every dollar you make when you start your business. But the fact that not only did you think about reserves to, you know, for your business, but also for your team, your people, that's just so admirable to me. And you guys are great. So I totally understand the tenure of your team, because you two are definitely, I mean, I've known you now for several years, and you two are definitely two people to admire, in my opinion. So I can definitely see you all having
Right back at you.
Yeah,
long-lasting team.
absolutely. And I know you have a very similar story of starting the company with your husband. Yeah, some commentary on the cash reserves. I think, I'm going to guess, if you're listening to this podcast, you're an early stage entrepreneur, right? And
Yeah.
finding ways to make it work. And I believe there's a certain amount of inception when you start your company that will live out through your entire career. And when you start your company, what is happening in the world? Like if you're starting your company right now during a pandemic, that is being, inception's the best word I can think. That is creating some sort of baseline strengths and weaknesses within you right now. And when I started the company, I was just coming out of the .com bust, not the .com rise, right? And so what happened in that time? Well, there were these huge surges of investment and growth and complete collapse. Abigail and I were in San Francisco at that time, and we just saw that city get decimated. And of course, they bounced back, and things are very, very much flourishing in Silicon Valley now. But to witness that and see so much upheaval of people's lives was very, very impactful on me. And then shortly after starting the company, we went into this housing crisis, and we were still a fairly small company of 6 or 7 people at the time, and not having significant cash reserves and a lot of fear about what could happen. So those seeds get planted. And like I said, that's not just a weakness, it's a strength too, because we really value stability and the strength of our team and financial strength and support. And so I would say for people who are starting a company now, like I was saying about watch your energy levels, think about what seeds you're planting in your own mind right now. What are you fearful of and what are you bullish on? And it is very likely that's going to live in you for the next 20 to 30 years until you reach some other level of nirvana, right? So like business nirvana. So I think that's a really important part of everybody's story. But what I didn't start doing is the mental math of like the decisions I'm making now based on decisions or the world 15 years ago.
Wow, that's so profound. Go ahead, Abigail.
Oh, sorry, just to kind of add to that. So what he's describing is really, I think, from a risk tolerance perspective, once again, there's positives and negatives. Like
Definitely.
when we went through the last recession, we chose to put money back into the company so we didn't have to lay anyone off. We made a lot of kind of sacrifices to keep the company and the team in position. And, our risk tolerance since then has also been low, and really it hasn't been to the last few years that the company has been able to start scaling and growing, because we did keep that risk tolerance. We didn't want to make hires because there was a little bit of that fear that we may have to lay that person off. And so I think early in Toolbox's kind of in the company history, there was a little bit too much of being fearful of, possibly having to, lay team members off. And I think that did stunt our growth a little bit. And I do think in the last few years, we've been able to kind of expand and really try to open up that risk tolerance and grow the team and take on, larger, bigger type projects.
Yeah, I would say the risk tolerance is the exact same, but what has changed is the growth of the company and some seemingly wise financial decisions and building that cash reserve you spoke about. So I would say my risk tolerance is the exact same. I think that is fixed, but when you have more levers to pull and more safety cushions, you can take bigger risks. And, I think this is very personal to everybody. And I've seen people that are with a very high risk tolerance do phenomenally well and completely collapse. I've seen everything, and part of it is luck, right? Like that. So you got to create your own luck. And for me personally, and I think Abigail agrees, is like, we have to create an environment that matches our risk tolerance. We know we want to grow. We know we want our company to flourish, but what does that mean for us? Like, what choices do we need to make to create an environment we are comfortable in, and not just for ourselves, but putting other people into, right? I think we take on, one thing Abigail and I have shared since the very beginning, even prior to starting a company, is this like overwhelming sense of responsibility for the people around us, right? And once again, strengths and weaknesses. So we want to make sure the people who work for us are in an environment where they feel like they can flourish and they feel safe. And I believe we have created that environment. And now the goal, of course, is like, okay, how do we embrace growth? How do we take a little bit more risk in order to get to that next level you spoke about, Monica, right? Like, what does it take? So it's been a very cool evolution, both personally and watching other people evolve. And it gets me very excited. I can't say I'm a glass half full person, but I am currently glasses half full, watching what I'm predicting the improvements that will happen over our industry and hopefully the world over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm very, very optimistic, and I'm excited about what we call a digital transformation. And I think we're going to see a lot of companies' ability to take on risk increase as the economy gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Wow. And so you mentioned earlier about you and Abigail being married and in business together, and Ethan and I are the same. And he and our risk tolerance is very different. He is a risk taker. He'll jump off a cliff, and I'm the person who pulls him back in. So it's that, that balance between the two that I think helps us for sure. So before I jump into that, though, because I have some questions around you all working together, I just want to real quick ask you, though, how has this year been for your business with the pandemic and your team, and how are you all dealing with all of that?
So I think one good thing is that our company and our team was already well versed being able to work from home. We had a fairly flexible policy. So a lot of our team might work from home a day or two a week. So they were already set up so that was a smooth transition. And in terms of a lot of what we do, especially from a user experience design perspective, we have these very these workshops that are just fantastic. And it really helps us get stakeholder alignment with our clients' teams, really help them flesh out the vision. As I'm sure you're aware, until people visualize and see something, they really just can't wrap their heads around it. And that was one of what we were most worried about was how are we going to transition from these very successful in-person workshops where we really our team starts, has these highly collaborative sessions, and we really kind of create that foundation with our client and help them map out the vision for their product or website. And so that, from kind of a work process perspective, was our biggest hurdle. But we've really been able to leverage a lot of tools. And in fact, we think we've become even more efficient by leveraging online whiteboarding tools. And really, we were a little nervous also about a drop of engagement from our clients, and were they really going to be able to participate and stay with us? And we've just been able to kind of map out those workshops and have really found that they're highly successful. We're also able to kind of fit more in because there isn't travel time. So our team, I think, has actually become more productive. And certainly from a culture perspective, we were a little nervous about our team. As we've kind of alluded to, we have a very strong team. They really not just, respect each other, but enjoy working with each other. And so we were quite nervous about that translation when everyone's working from home and they're not in the office. They're not having conversations about around the water cooler. But we have it's a culture committee. And they have just done a fantastic job of scheduling different activities. Every Friday, we have a Friday fun time. One time somebody came and did a Zoom and taught us how to do origami. We did Baby Yoda. Sometimes it can just be a fun happy hour. We've done mini TED Talks where different people on the team have shared their talents and interests and gotten a little experience in terms of public speaking. So the culture team has just been really such a pillar in terms of keeping that culture alive during, a challenging year.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
I feel it's the best word I can use, blessed. We're from a work product perspective, because we're so digital focused, we're increasingly more relevant to what a lot of businesses, their evolution process. Meaning that if you've heard the term digital transformation, a lot of companies are trying to find traditional ways to advance. And for us, this isn't the shelter in place and COVID it's actually an acceleration of what we saw as the inevitability of how we work and what type of evolutions companies need to make in the next 5 to 10 years. They got accelerated into 1 to 3 years for a lot of companies. So even going into this, I was fairly confident that I'm like, this is indirectly going to benefit companies like ours who are already involved in helping companies embrace digital transformation. The other thing that has brought a lot of stability to our company in this time is a lot of our clients are in the healthcare world. And they, of course, were relevant prior to COVID, but now a lot of our clients, like what they do is heroic. And in getting their message or their products into the world is not just a business move. It is like necessary for whether we're talking about the business continuity of getting infection prevention around the world, if we're getting public health information disseminated. So not only have we been seeing the kind of the energy around digital transformation, we've seen the energy around the digital transformation of healthcare. And that has been very, very exciting to be part of. And I joke with my team, but I'm only having halfway facetious. Some of the work we do saves lives. And, we are not doctors, we are not frontline workers, but I do know if we do our job better, more lives are saved. And I'm like, I could not say that 2 years ago. So I'm very proud of the work we've done, and even more proud of the work our clients are doing to accelerate the healthcare of not just America, but the world. And so we've watched that firsthand. So I would say the most positive way I can outcome of this year from a Toolbox perspective is being part of that wave.
Yeah, wow. As I say, saving lives one infographic at a time.
Right.
I love that. I mean, wow, that's a very good point. And I don't know I don't even remember the website, but I went to one particular website because people would come in our store and I realized they weren't wearing their mask correctly. So I printed out an infographic from a website and put it up in our lobby. So yes, you all are saving lives one infographic at a time. I love that, Abigail. I love that. Well, I'm going to have one more question. And Jason, I know that we have had the pleasure of creating embroidered gear for Toolbox. We've also created some really cool stuff for you because you guys are just super cool and give really cool gifts to your friends. And we've had the pleasure of doing some of those things. But, going to your company and your logo and branding, how important do you feel it is for you all to wear and show your brands on the products that you have or that you share with your team members even?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the apparel and branding, it doesn't matter what type of company you are, like it's one of the best investments you can make. And, whether we're talking about a t-shirt or a hoodie or a jacket or hat or coffee mug, to me, like the physical manifestation of your culture is just this constant reminder of kind of why you're doing this. And when I'm on a Zoom call with our team and I see almost everybody wearing Toolbox gear, it does fill me with pride, right? It's not a uniform. They're wearing it because, well, maybe it's just free clothing, but I feel like they carry the culture with them. They wear it, and it's so important. And Zeus's Closet has been very cool. Monica mentioned even the stuff we do for friends. The real value to me of Zeus's Closet, even with your tagline, it's like a tattoo for your clothes, right? And the personalization aspect of it to me is just it's very analogous to what we do as a company in digital. And when we create personalized gifts for employees or family, our friends, and you see them wear it or carry it, it's such a cool feeling. It lives on. So we've definitely done some really cool stuff with you guys, and we'll continue to. And I think that a decision to invest in brand apparel was a decision we made practically on day one. And it's been cool to find awesome partners like you guys who can help make that come to life.
Well, thank you all so much for choosing us. We do appreciate it. And we get really excited, just like you all get excited about delivering your clients the best website and their customers the best website experience. That's how we feel about our embroidery and screen printing and all of that good stuff. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Jason always will brainstorm an idea. He's like, oh, I have a friend who loves to cook. I'm going to get a chef jacket with a, embroidered background. And it's just it really is. It's fun to brainstorm. And he just can't wait to pick up the phone and call Ethan and give him the vision. And then it's wonderful then when we see it brought to life, when you guys produce such wonderful pieces.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you guys, this has been so great. It's wonderful to see your faces and to chat and just get to know more about your business. And I really do appreciate the time. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Well, thanks, Monica.
Have a good one.
I truly appreciate Abigail and Jason for taking time out of their schedule to stop by and contribute so meaningfully to the Stitch for Success podcast. They cover so much, but a few takeaways that I heard as I was listening, and I hope that you will pay attention to as you launch and grow your business, is one, there's a difference between being the doer and then becoming the person managing the doers in your business. As you grow, at some point you will have to let go of some of the reins This can be especially difficult for those of us who are the creatives. We're used to being the visionaries. So you'll have to learn to delegate, but not only delegate, you'll have to learn to lead and manage. In a future episode, I will give you some book and podcast suggestions to help in this area. When we added team members, we had a lot to learn when it came to managing people. We still don't always get it right. I've said it before. This is the second point. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Save a % of every dollar you make. As Jason mentions, this will give you the opportunity to take bigger risks down the road and perhaps grow your business faster because you have a safety net in place. And lastly, you may have to get creative to really get things moving. Paying for time can be very expensive. You can find yourself losing money on a project or on a product when paying for time. So consider using freelancers and paying a set amount on a project. These were just a few of the takeaways that I wanted to reiterate, but there are many more. If you're in need of any of the services that Toolbox Number 9 offers, you can find their contact information in the show notes. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. I am so grateful for you. If you have any thoughts to add to the conversation, please feel free to direct message me on Instagram. My IG is @Stitch4Success. Thanks to those of you who have provided feedback on the podcast. Michael, Tishi, Eunicia, I appreciate you. You can also reach me via email, which is stitch4success@gmail.com. Please share, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. And lastly, remember that we have a community for you on Facebook. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, but just come on over, join us at the Stitch for Success Facebook group, and we're there to share and help each other. My hope is that this podcast is beneficial to you as you launch and grow your business. Take care and have a great one.